Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Third Umpire podcast. I'm Ali and I'm joined by Ali. Today we're going to be talking about the West Indies Pakistan test match. Firstly, how are you
Uh,
doing? How's everything?
Everything's good. How are you?
Good,
Feels
good.
strange to be in a different country, but yeah. The game, it was a great game in terms of like how exciting it was, and like a proper advertisement for Test cricket. I felt so. Yeah, overall, it was a great. Even though it was disappointing if you're a Pakistan fan because it was a very winnable game at the end of the day.
To me personally, I've mentioned this on in our previous podcast as well, in one of the previous ones, where I honestly don't mind if the team is losing. I mind if they're not performing well. And the way we fought, I mean, the way Pakistan team fought and they showed, the passion. If you look at it, through players like Hasan Ali, recently we saw Shaheen Afridi. We're going to talk about players more, but the passion is what, I was looking for. Now we finally got to see it. And as you mentioned, it was the perfect advertisement for Test cricket. I mean, what more could someone want? And the best thing was it was 4 days as well.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see a fifth day. Just like how we saw in the India England series, but it didn't work out. So, what do you think about? Do you want to talk about players first?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind in terms of our weaknesses is our top three in our batting lineup, right?
100%.
Our openers and Azhar Ali's form as well. So I think in our very first podcast, we talked about our openers a lot because we had the Zimbabwe tests when that happened. And honestly, I think I brought up that Imran, but he was selected on the basis of one good domestic performance, and it wasn't even amazing; it was good. And the rest of his seasons, he's averaged 30 something, nothing special. So I think we can see that right now with his batting. He's not been scoring many runs.
But to have, I mean, I was watching a recent a post on social media about how we finally found like an ace, a slip fielder, right? A solid
Yeah,
fielder.
best specialist fielder in the world.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about Shadab being an exceptional fielder as well, but it's good to see someone bringing up the fielding standards of the team. Of course, the first time I looked at this team, I've seen Abid Ali's recent form; it hasn't been too good. Azhar Ali as well. Recently, they've sort of picked up, but in the past years, the previous 2 3 years, it hasn't been of the order that it should be on. When you look at Azhar Ali's the caliber that he possesses, a triple centurion.
Yeah,
When I watch Azhar Ali, you hear discussion of him being an LBW candidate. You hear so much, but I feel the batsman once he gets set, once he just takes his time, he can do wonders for the team, which unfortunately wasn't
absolutely.
able to happen this series. There were my other batsmen that were able to take their time and get set. When I say take your time, I mean, take a good 40, 50 balls and get set. However, they weren't able to, extend that position that they managed to capitalize on. And
Yeah.
that hats off to the West Indian bowling for hitting those key areas and, just managing to get the catches and the slips. What do you think about this sort of bowling? I mean, we've seen in Test cricket, this is something that we see a lot with England. You hit the right areas. You look at Anderson, Broad, and you have 3 4 men in the slips, and everyone's there to
Yeah.
catch. That's the way to get the wickets. So, what do you think about that, as opposed to traditional way of just going, for a bowl?
I mean, it's like classic line and length. I think the pitches as well matter a lot, right? The conditions matter. Obviously, in the UAE, for example, or even in Pakistan, but to less of an extent, you can't just bowl good length outside off and expect the edges to come, right? Because the ball doesn't really move around. So you have to use variations. So I think in these conditions, yes, absolutely, you can bowl like that. And we saw that it was a low scoring game because I felt like they were bowling friendly conditions.
100% agreed. This was one of the few low scoring games that I actually enjoyed to watch. It was actually fun.
I actually prefer low scoring games
Yeah,
personally.
it was intense, and yeah, the pitches as well. So let's talk about so we spoke about the openers. Do you want to say anything else about our top three?
Yeah, I mean, uh,
Do you feel
in
there should be
Test
a
cricket,
shuffle in the order
I don't. I
in those
think
three?
within those three, honestly, I think we can afford to replace one of them. And personally, I've always been fine with Azhar Ali opening. I think he's done all right as an opener in the past as well. So I don't know why he insists, or maybe it's not him, maybe it's the management. I don't know why they insist on moving him down to three. Because he can play out the new ball well sometimes.
So you have South Shakil knocking on the door. You have,
Yeah.
um, for example, there are many other batsmen that performed well
Shan
in first
Masood
class.
even.
Shan Masood
Shan
of
Masood
late in
even.
white ball cricket, he's been exceptional. He's knocking on the door. You have other players
Yeah.
in the past year like Kamran Ghulam,
Yeah, he
or
was the highest run scorer in
right?
the
He's
Qaeda Azam Trophy.
so
Yeah.
so you have players like that. 100%, you can argue that the scope, the stage of international cricket is something completely, it's different. But going back to our conversation about openers, and just the top three in general, I feel now this is the first match of the World Test Championship, right? We have to come good in this tournament. We have to take it absolutely seriously. I was watching Azhar Ali's quote before, and he mentioned
Absolutely.
that he wants Pakistan to be the World Test champions. So if that's our approach, we seriously have to look at it with a proper regard. If you look at Indian cricket right now, the attention that they're paying to Test cricket is, you know,
Yeah,
um,
amazing. Australia, now
yeah,
England,
England
they just, yeah.
especially. So we should also make that the benchmark to follow. Having so taking that into account, I don't recommend a constant reshuffling of the order. If you look at the top three, that's why I didn't mean to drop anyone. What I meant to say was, do you feel that for example, Azhar Ali should go opening, or because we have, let's be honest now, we've gone with Shan Masood for a couple of years, right? Of late, he has performed well. He's knocked on the door, but that's no reason to just let go of Imran. But after, like, for so soon, I mean, I think we should let him play for a little bit more, and sort of understand, because I think it's too soon. He you do have the,
So
yeah.
I think there's a, yeah, go, sorry, go on. You
I
can,
mean, you do have the case where he hasn't been performing of late, but is it fair? I mean, let me put it to you this way: is it fair to drop Imran? But
yeah, I get what you're saying, but for me, I think there's a distinction between Imran Butt and Abid Ali in the sense that I don't call for Abid Ali to be dropped. And the reason for that is, like I brought up earlier, Imran Butt's domestic record. I don't think it's that good. Abid Ali for many years was scoring a lot of runs in domestic cricket. Imran Butt had one good domestic season. And I think that's very telling. Players don't get better in international cricket. They're made in domestic cricket. That's the way I see it. They get refined in international cricket, but you can't really develop a player, especially he's not very young either, right? Imran Butt. So in that sense, I think Saud Shakil is a good option to try in his place, and maybe Azhar Ali can open. And even Azhar Ali, like, let's see how long he plays now as
and
well,
we
right?
saw Asad Shafiq recently scoring a quick 50 in the KPL recently. So I mean, he's trying to make a
Yeah,
name for himself as well. He's trying to get back in the team. So 100%. I'm glad that we had the discussion on the top three. Babar Azam looked
yeah,
set. He
yeah,
batted. He made a 50, but unfortunately
yeah. He looked very good in that
he couldn't.
innings.
He was the example. When I mentioned about how we weren't able to take the game longer with our set batsmen. Uh, Fawad Alam played decently in the beginning. It was unfortunate what happened in the second innings. But just going back to the pitch was extremely difficult, and we saw it with the West Indian batsmen as well. And watching the tail-enders perform well, you look at Hasan Ali from our team, Kemar, Roach. We're going to talk about more about that, and soon. But the tail-enders were just willing to stick it out and take risks and enjoy the game. Basically, what do you think about Hasan Ali's
Yeah,
batting performance? It was
I mean,
of how
has
he batted in the domestic, when he made his comeback and made the odd 100. It was, this batsman, like, fearless batting is what is the approach, because every batsman, I
yeah,
mean, let's be frank, Ali, when I watch Test cricket these days, everyone's trying to be the classic, the proper batsman, everyone's trying to, and this makes them a candidate for LBWs, or a candidate for just that simple slip catch, that we keep talking about. But when you look at Hassan Ali, he noticed, he's like, this approach is not going to work. We need quick runs, and we need
yeah,
them now, right? Those
yeah.
runs did make a
So the
difference.
way,
Imagine had we not
yeah,
had Hassan Ali coming in, had we had another tail-ender sort of batsman, we would have been 30, 40 short, right? Because
yeah,
one
for
my favorite
sure.
thing about Test cricket is you're not scoring, but you're making runs. You're adding runs to the scoreboard. Why? Because those ones and twos, dot balls, everything adds to that scoreboard, even if you're not hitting boundaries. So
Yeah.
that was one of my
I
favorite
mean,
things
the
about this
what
Test
it's
match.
what they say, right? They say that in bowling friendly conditions, when it's difficult to bat, you're gonna get a ball with your name on it. You're gonna get out, so might as well score some runs, right? That's exactly how what Hassan Ali does, and even to an extent, Faheem Ashraf in Test cricket, because the fielders are in, he finds it much easier to bat in Test cricket than he does in limited overs cricket, and it shows in his record and his runs over the last few years. And one
Yeah.
more thing I want to mention about Hassan is that Hassan, we've been saying, and we said in the last podcast that he should be utilized more with the bat, especially in ODIs and T20s. He should be sent up the order, which is why we saw how well he batted in Test cricket. He's a very natural striker of the ball in all formats of the game.
One more thing about Test cricket, what you mentioned about Faheem as well. In Test cricket, we rarely see bowlers going for, like, the odd change of pace, or consistently with the bouncer. It's more stock deliveries, right? Especially on such a good bowling pitch like that, such a difficult
Yeah,
difficult pitch like that. You just go for the stock ball, and that's the ball that Hassan Ali is so comfortable against. Because in the previous podcast, you and I both spoke about how with the surprise bouncer Hassan Ali got deceived, right? So
yeah,
in test
exactly.
cricket,
That's the weakness.
that's a benefit that batsmen like Faheem Ashraf, Hassan Ali have. Going back to your point
Yeah,
about white ball cricket, I feel Faheem Ashraf hasn't been good in ODIs, but T20s he's been up to he's been decent. If you look at his record in the past, when I made the video about him as well, so it's not as bad as his ODI record. And 100% in Test cricket, it's the prime format for him, primarily because of the reason which I just mentioned right now. Then he
yeah,
adds value as a bowler. Of course, he's not the class of Hassan Ali right now, right? But Faheem Ashraf does offer, and he picked up some quick wickets, in the second innings especially, which
yeah,
helped the prime bowlers like Shaheen and Hassan Ali a lot. So we do need
yeah,
that additional bowler that's going to take the
yeah.
load
Agreed.
off the prime bowlers. If you look at
Yeah,
England, you have Chris Woakes doing that for you, and then he can come up,
yeah.
with that
And Chris Stokes
magnificent,
is awesome.
right, that magnificent batting
Yeah,
performance which he did against Pakistan last year or 2 years
he always does
against
against
us, right?
us.
So does Zach Crawley, and he
Yeah,
hasn't been in the form since his 267, I
yeah,
think, against us. So what I'm saying is it's a huge relief for other bowlers when you have a third bowler coming up. And what do you think about Abbas?
yeah. Especially
Since
in
we
Test
started
cricket.
talking about bowling, man, I've seen a huge improvement in Abbas's bowling. He's way more accurate. He's just tantalizingly quick, decently. I mean, sorry, tantalizingly accurate. If you look at his performances recently, I saw the laugh when I said quick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So obviously he's not quick, but the thing about Abbas is he gives you accuracy, a lot of control, right? The only problem with him then is that if Hassan and Shaheen aren't able to pick up wickets for whatever reason, it's difficult for him to come near the end when the ball is old and force wickets. That's when you need someone like a Wahab Riaz or someone, for example,
Liver
right? Where you
swing,
get
yeah.
someone who can force wickets, bouncers, all that. So with the Abbas, you really have to bank on him picking up wickets in
Early
the
wickets.
beginning of the game. Yeah, exactly.
Let's quickly talk about the spinning options. We saw recently we didn't
Yeah.
utilize Yasir Shah properly. I want to know your
Mhm.
thoughts on Yasir Shah.
My thoughts on Yasir are that I know he gets a lot of criticism, especially lately, and his overseas record isn't the best. But if you look at all the test matches that we've won over the last 7 years, Yasir has the biggest role to play in those wins single handedly, especially in Asia and especially even our last test series in the West Indies that we won. So with Yasir, I think that he can be a little inaccurate. He can be a little frustrating sometimes, but he's one of your proven spinners. And I think he wasn't really utilized that well on the last day. They brought him in late when the game was already lost. He hadn't bowled well in the first innings, but I think you can give him a go on a fourth day pitch a little early. Maybe give him like 3 or 4 overs even at the beginning before the runs required are so low that he starts leaking them, and then he gets under more pressure.
I really like your point that you made about the past years where he's single handedly taken us over the line. But the way I look at it is a bit different, because Yasir Shah, as you mentioned, does have the potential to leak those runs, right? Especially,
Yeah,
why is
yeah,
that? Why is that the case? Because for instance, in Test cricket, I feel he gives a lot of pace to the ball. He's not willing to give it that much flight. If you compare him with a bowler like, even if you compare him with Warren, for instance, Warren was able to change his speed, his direction according to the demands of the game.
absolutely.
Yasir Shah is, he has so much talent as well. But for me, whenever he's under pressure, I feel like he's trying to bowl a quicker ball. He's trying to he's
Yeah,
overthinking, perhaps is the word that I'm looking for, when you can just keep things simple. But of course, I'm no expert on spin bowling, especially leg spin, so I cannot criticize him. But what I'm just trying to say is, I think the problem which you mentioned of why he was brought in so late was because there's such a big risk. If you on early
yeah,
on, you have, because he's going to bowl you those quick balls and the batsman can milk him for those singles, and then he's going to give you a short ball, like a
yeah,
short one. You can just hit him for a four. Whereas in other bowlers, if you have, you look at our off spinners, Noman Ali or a bowler like that, it's minimized. But then the question is, why pick Yasir in the first place? So definitely they do see that potential in Yasir Shah based on his past
yeah,
performances, especially in the West Indies. So definitely, I agree that perhaps there was mismanagement of him, but on the contrary, on the other hand, I feel had we had a little bit more runs to play with, because 217 was clearly not enough. If we had 250
yeah.
even on the board, or let's say 260, 270, we could afford to let those 30, 40 runs, go by with adding Yasir Shah. There is a risk, 100%. Um, but I feel our fast bowlers did decently well. I wasn't disappointed at all. And especially, we spoke about Shaheen in the beginning, how he normally has
Yeah.
the potential to be expensive as well, because he comes under a little bit of pressure. As I mentioned in the last podcast, he's not the prime bowler. I mean, he is the prime bowler. He's the face of the bowling attack. Right, the
Responsibility. Yeah.
responsibility. So you do, as you, I love that you mentioned Wahab Riaz, because that's a bowler that literally takes the pressure off you. And he's a bowler that can bowl at the back end with a reverse swing.
I think this has been mentioned before, but we cannot ask for an easier cycle than the one we just got. This is like, we have so many test matches at home, and all our test matches away are against weaker teams. No offense to those teams, but teams like Sri Lanka and all of those teams. So personally, as a Pakistan fan, you can't ask for an easier test championship cycle, and it would be disappointing if we don't do well in this edition of the test championship, if not reach the final. Because if you don't reach it now, when are you going to reach it next time? When we play against Australia in Australia, we're not going to win that. When we play against New Zealand in New Zealand in future test championship cycles, that's going to be much more difficult for us.
Agreed. 100% about how our schedule is comparatively much easier at home. And also taking into account how, this is another problem being brought up by Inzamam al Haq as well, how the opposition teams, if you look at New Zealand, the squad that they're sending to Pakistan now, or, just generally how the squads have been sent, they're not the top strength or with the full strength squads. So
Yeah.
you can argue in that favor that it's an easier chance for us as
Yeah.
well. However, as we've been mentioning in the previous podcasts, we have to do more research now. We have to be more we have to anticipate,
Yeah.
it's not predictable now. We don't know what we're getting with these new players.
Yeah.
So there is that element of surprise if you look at these new teams that are coming.
Yeah. But
I
really,
just want
I
to
mean,
quickly end.
yeah, one thing, it's not really as surprising as, say, like the England team that just got COVID, right? Because now beforehand, months in advance, that this team is going to come a little weaker, whatever. So really, I don't think there's any excuse to not beat them.
Do you have to say anything about opposition teams sending their second teams or their third teams to play
I
Pakistan,
mean, this gets a
Bangladesh?
little controversial, because then you have this whole New Zealand thing happened because of the IPL. And like, I understand one thing. I understand that the IPL was scheduled before this series. So that's I get that, but I still think that international cricket, so I think that cricket is already a sport that's, I'm not going to say it's dying, but it's a sport played by very few countries, right? And on one hand, the ICC and everyone says we want to expand cricket, like
Especially
every
Test cricket,
country,
right?
yeah, every country, we want to expand cricket to the US, China, whatever, we want to globalize it. But then on the other hand, you have things like this happening where international cricket is not being prioritized over T20 leagues. And I'm all for T20 leagues. I'm not against the IPL. I'm not against any of that. I just think that there should be a little more understanding and communication between the boards and between like domestic leagues and all of that, so that stuff like this doesn't happen in the future.
Agreed, agreed. Also, I mean, if you look at it from another perspective, what's at stake right now? So, if you're not going to send your full strength squad, you're literally playing in the hands of the World Test Championship, right? Because you're taking into account that, your team could get, hammered by the opposition. If you look at Bangladesh and Australia right now, I mean, you do have a point that this could get controversial, but I think it's right to mention this because
Yeah,
this is
no,
happening more and more. As we see cricket developing, we saw it with Bangladesh and Australia right now as well, and Inzamam brought it up. So we do need to take that into account. Who are we facing? It's so important to be well versed about your opposition, right? I
yeah,
just want to end with quickly talking about the reasons why we lost this test match. We spoke about our batting failures in the beginning. One more factor which I want to take into account: 100% the catches were slightly difficult, but
y-
not those 3 4 catches that we dropped in the latter
yeah,
end. I feel had we just taken those, or had we just because as we spoke about cricket being a domino effect game, right?
yeah,
In fact, every game is, but this is more because you're saving runs as well. And think of it like this: you drop a catch, what is it, single double, right? That's where you lose those 2 crucial runs. So
yeah.
it's also the runs that you're giving away. Do you think that that also has an immense impact to play on the
Yeah,
scorecard?
I mean, at this point, as a Pakistani fan, you become so jaded, right? Like you become so used to drop catches, to miss fields and stuff like that. That really, it's part of. It's as disappointing as it sounds. It's part of Pakistan cricket at this point, and obviously, it's essential because you're literally giving a batsman another life. So you have to get out. Your bowlers have to get out more than getting 10 wickets is already so difficult. Getting more than 10 in such a close test match, you're giving the game to the opposition on a silver platter at that point. And like you said, runs as well. Like the ball goes to the fielder, he drops it, and the batsman run one or two. In a low scoring game, 1 or 2 runs have a massive impact.
Agreed. So on that sad note, I think we should end this. It's been fun. It's been interesting, and
Yeah,
looking forward to the second test match. I feel it's going to be extremely competitive because now the teams know about each other a little bit more.
yeah.
And what are you expecting from the next game? What's your prediction?
From I can't say for West Indies what they do. I'm pretty sure they'll go in with an unchanged team unless something happens. But
Any changes in our squad?
uh, in our squad, I would say that I would keep the bowling the same, and I know like I would keep Yasir still, and I would maybe I know you won't like this, but I would drop Imran, but
Why wouldn't I like that?
because like you said, you want to give him chances, right? But like I said, I don't think his domestic record is good enough, and it's shown in international cricket. He can be the best fielder in the world. He needs to score runs. That's his job.
I mean, the sad part is there are only 2 test matches, so we can't really,
There's that
go
true.
crazy
Yeah,
regarding that aspect. Had we had
yeah.
5 test matches,
One
which I
player though.
wish
That's all I mean. I'm not saying
100%.
change up
So,
the whole
I
team.
mean, I don't see us changing our team. If it happens, I don't know if they're gonna drop. I don't know who they're gonna drop. So let's see.
Yeah.
But yeah, hope you like this episode, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day. Bye bye. Assalamu